Let's look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions mock off-season video. Over the last couple of days, we have really talked about how the Detroit Lions should improve their team going forward. Some of the players they should cut, some of the free agents they should re-sign, and some of the active free agents that they should look to bring in from other organizations. But today is where it really gets fun. Today is the kind of the cherry on top, really the best part of the offseason, and where Brad Holmes and the Detroit Lions have really thrived over the last 2 years, that being the 2023 NFL Draft. Now, going through the free agency, of course, the NFL Draft was always the end game, and you really want to add a lot of your young talent through the NFL Draft while addressing a few holes in free agency. And going throughout this entire process so far, I really had a point where I wanted to fill as many holes as possible, clean up as much of the Detroit Lions as I can, so that we could focus on best player available, focus on value, and focus on bringing in some superstars regardless of positional value at times. So, with that being said, that was a big part of this mock draft, right? Going best player available, going for, some positions of need for sure at the top, but also just taking value, taking playmakers, and taking guys that are going to help the team get better short term and long term. So with that being said, let's get on to the 6th overall pick. So the first 5 went about as you could expect, right? You had, of course, Jalen Carter come off the board, then you had Bryce Young, then you had Will Anderson, and then the Colts made a big time decision and decided to go with Will Levis over CJ Stroud, and then the Seattle Seahawks went with Tyree Wilson, leaving the Detroit Lions at 6 with a situation and with an opportunity. Do you take CJ Stroud, or do you trade down? And the Carolina Panthers, freshly off hiring head coach Frank Reich, had a call for the quarterback. Now, Frank Reich, I think, is a really good opportunity for the Detroit Lions to trade down because he's a new-time head coach, right? Really struggled to find that franchise quarterback in Indianapolis, which is a big reason why he was cut and a big reason why he was released of the head coaching duties. I think he's going to try to get that franchise quarterback as soon as possible, and CJ Stroud seems to be a very good fit. There have been reports that CJ Stroud, to them, is one of the better quarterback prospects, and they want CJ Stroud more than any other guy, and they're potentially looking to make a move to go get him. So, without asking for too much, I do think this trade is going to benefit the Detroit Lions, as the Lions send pick number 6 and pick 194 to the Carolina Panthers for pick 9, pick 114, pick 222, as well as a 2024 first round selection. So the Panthers move up and they get CJ Stroud. The Lions move down just 3 picks and get the guy that we were probably going to take at 6 anyway, that being Devon Witherspoon, the cornerback from Illinois. Now, Devon Witherspoon last year had 41 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, and led college football in passes defended with 14. He's a big, extremely physical corner, has good ball skills, has good instincts, and always turns his head to get his hands on the football. He has just this very good ability that you can't really teach, right? He just has that instinct to turn his head, has that instinct to get his hand on the football, and he was huge for the Illinois secondary all year. I think he is, if not cornerback 1, he is definitely cornerback 2 in this class. If the Lions can get a guy like Devon Witherspoon, somebody with the ball skills, somebody with the confidence, somebody with the technique and the physicality like Devon Witherspoon, I think they would jump at the opportunity to take a guy that could one day be their alpha cornerback 1, right? Pair him with James Bradberry day 1, not have to force him to guard wide receiver 1s in his rookie year, but when James Bradberry moves on, right, you put him at cornerback 1, maybe you draft another guy, or you put Jeff Okudah at cornerback 2, and you go with that young duo for long-term success. But I think pick 9, and I think the first pick really should be considered to be Devon Witherspoon. Now, moving all the way down to pick number 18, there was a player that was really standing out to me, a player that needed to be filled at a position on the lines, a position that hasn't really been filled up to this point, and that was the right guard position. And of course, O'Cyrus Torrence, the offensive guard from Georgia, the 6'5" mammoth of a human being, was sitting there at number 18, and I decided to use the pick on O'Cyrus Torrence. Somebody that, again, is 6'5", is very large, very powerful, and actually is really well-rounded as a football player. I watched a lot of tape of him versus the Georgia Bulldogs, and specifically him versus number 1 or projected number 1 overall pick Jalen Carter. They went back and forth all day long, and when it came to the running game, I think O'Cyrus Torrence absolutely dominated the Georgia offensive line for the Florida Gators. Now, obviously, Florida didn't have the greatest day versus the Georgia Bulldogs, but O'Cyrus Torrence showed that he had the ability to play at a top level versus any level of competition, and adding him next to Penei Sewell, I genuinely don't know who in the NFL is going to be able to stop that offensive line. If it's 4th and 1, and you're running behind 6'5" O'Cyrus Torrence as well as Penei Sewell, there is no defensive player in the league that is going to be able to push those guys into the backfield. There is no way you are going to stop Jamal Williams behind those two guys on 4th and 1 at any point during the season. And you add a guy that stayed healthy, that would absolutely improve the run game on day 1, as well as being a really good pass protector, doesn't have character concerns, doesn't really have any flaws in his game as of right now, completing the offensive line with somebody that has proven to stay healthy. Your offensive line is complete and arguably the best offensive line in football, and you go from an offensive line that last year was very good, allowed the fewest sacks in football, to an offensive line that can allow the fewest sacks in football while giving your running backs extra space and extra time to improve the rushing attack. Now, moving on to pick 48, this I think is the steal of the draft. Kelee Ringo is somebody that I very much believe will go in the first round. I think that his tape versus Ohio State and really his game versus Marvin Harrison Jr. is being significantly overblown. They needed a reason and they needed a way to hype up some other cornerbacks, and for that reason, Kelee Ringo is starting to fall. If Kelee Ringo is available in the second round, even if he's available with the first pick in the second round or even with the 31st pick in the first round, and I were the Detroit Lions, I would absolutely trade up for the Georgia prospect. Standing at 6'2", 210 pounds, having legit 4.3 speed, and coming off of a year where he had 2 interceptions and 7 passes defended, he's a very good, very physical press man corner that was elite in almost every single metric. He is the right size, he is a great speed. Finding a cornerback at 210 pounds that is 6'2" and moves the way that Kelee Ringo does is simply unheard of in the NFL and college football, and for that reason, Kelee Ringo is an elite cornerback prospect. He is somebody that could be a cornerback 1 any day of the week, and somebody that can go out there, has the confidence, has the skills, has the patience, has the ball skills to go out and be a legit cornerback 1 in the NFL. And if he somehow does fall to 48, the Lions would be absolutely foolish not to double up at the cornerback position and take a guy like Kelee Ringo at 48. Now, the Lions didn't have to wait long to make their next pick, as Tui Pelotu, the defensive lineman from USC, was staring them in the face. Now, the Lions have yet to address defensive tackle early in this offseason because there just wasn't really great value, right? I don't really see the Detroit Lions spending big money on Daron Payne, and unless it's Jalen Carter, I really don't know if the Detroit Lions should go with the edge rusher or the defensive tackle at pick number 6 when they have the opportunity to get the number 1 cornerback in the class. But sitting here at 55 in the middle of the second round, and a player that stands at 6'4", 290 pounds, coming off of a season with 22 tackles for loss and 13.5 sacks, makes it seem very obvious that this should be the pick, right? He is somebody that could be moved inside, could be moved outside, really played more edge rusher for USC, but reminds me a lot of Chris Jones, who can move inside and move outside, but is really best at the interior pass rushing position, something that the Lions really struggled with. He's a good run stopper, he is very powerful, he's a good pass rusher, he is a very, very good player, and with his positional value kind of being overlooked, I think that being here at 55 is a good value for the Lions. They get a good playmaker, they get a good rotational guy in day 1 who can develop into a star in the making. Now moving on to pick 81, I do think the Lions look to replace Deshaun Elliott with this pick, selecting Jair Brown, safety from Penn State. Now Jair Brown stands at just 5'11", isn't the biggest safety in the world, but he has just an absolute presence on the football field. 56 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, and 4 interceptions a season ago, and having 10 interceptions over his last 2 years, with more forced fumbles and fumble recoveries to add to it. This guy always finds a way to take the football away. Him and Jaquan Brisker, one of the best safety duos in college football when they were together, and a large part of it, I think, was Jair Brown. Not to throw any shade at Jaquan Brisker, but I think Jair Brown is maybe the best safety prospect to come out of Penn State in a very, very long time. You're getting a guy that turns the football over, has very good instincts, always somehow finds the ball to force incompletions or force turnovers, and with Aaron Glenn, who we know really likes his 3 safety sets, having a safety trio of Tracy Walker, Kirby Joseph, and Jair Brown would be phenomenal for the Detroit Lions. And then, of course, Kirby Joseph at your 4. That's a really good young safety room with a lot of ball hawks and a lot of players that find the football very often. Now, moving on to pick 114, this is a pick that we received in the trade from the Carolina Panthers. I think the Lions go linebacker here. Peyton Willis is a 6'4", 235-pound linebacker from the University of North Carolina State. Now last year he had 82 tackles, 12.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, an interception, and 3 passes defended. And although his junior year was ended prematurely because of an injury, the year before that looks nearly identical, while having nearly 100 tackles, double-digit tackles for loss, about 5 sacks, another interception, and more passes defended. He is just simply a productive linebacker at 6'4". He can rush the passer, he can play in coverage. He is just a very good all-around playmaker, and adding a little bit of size, adding a little bit of athleticism to the Detroit Lions defense, even if it's just for certain packages, could be really helpful here with the early 4th round pick. Now, moving down, we had to wait a while, about 40 rough picks before the Lions could select again. And I think the Lions go offense this time. They've gone defense almost every single pick with Devon Witherspoon, Keely Ringo, Tui Tuipulotu, Jair Brown, Peyton Willis. Now it's time to offer something to the offense with Georgia running back Kenny McIntosh. Now this is a player that doesn't really get the hype that I think he deserves, right? Of course, you have the elite running backs in this class. You have Bijan Robinson, you have Jamar Gibbs, you had Blake Corum, and of course there's a couple other guys that are being talked about as potential day 2 selections, while Kenny McIntosh is really looked at as somebody that's not even inside the top 150 prospects, but is a running back from Georgia that stands at 6'1", 210 pounds. Last year had 1,334 total yards, total rushing and receiving yards, while totaling 12 total touchdowns and averaging 5.6 yards per carry in his senior year for the Georgia Bulldogs. This is somebody that is built for the NFL. He is a good size, a good weight, has good speed. He breaks away from people in the open field. He makes people miss. He has the strength to run over people. He is an NFL running back in every sense of the term. And if the Lions can add him, I think that he may end up being the prime running back going forward. This is somebody that once DeAndre Swift is gone, could move into the number 1 running back role immediately, because I think he has every skill and every tool to succeed at the NFL level. Again, over 1,300 scrimmage yards and 12 scrimmage touchdowns, while averaging over 5 yards per carry every year of his collegiate career. This is somebody I think is being heavily undervalued in the pre-draft process, and if the Lions walk away with him, they're walking away with a potential RB1 for the future. Now, moving down to pick 183, there weren't really a whole lot of picks left, and there weren't really a whole lot of positions I felt needed to be addressed by the Detroit Lions. And Clayton Tune, the cornerback from Houston, really just kept falling and falling and falling. And for a guy that really looks like an NFL prospect, right? 6'3", 210 pounds, throwing for over 4,000 yards, 40 touchdowns to 10 interceptions a season ago, it really didn't make a lot of sense for a guy that in the 5th, in the 6th round, continues to fall, has the size, has the arm strength, has the accuracy, really has all the things you would look for in an NFL quarterback, at least in a backup quarterback role. It didn't make a lot of sense not to select the quarterback from Houston. Again, Clayton Tune is big, 6'3", has the size, 210, has the production, 4,000 yards, has thrown actually 10 interceptions the last 3 years, right? His last 3 years, his senior, junior, sophomore year, all 10 touchdowns, but has gotten progressively more, same interceptions at 10, but has gotten progressively more touchdowns every single year. And I believe finished his collegiate career with well over 100 touchdowns in less than 40 interceptions. He worked in kind of that air raid offense there at Houston, but going into an NFL offense like the Detroit Lions, I see no reason why he couldn't plug in and just be a prolific passer, be a really good young quarterback for the Detroit Lions to potentially develop, not to challenge Jared Goff, not to push him for a starting role or even push him out of Detroit, but somebody that could be an upgrade at the backup quarterback position with a late round pick, because as we've seen from the 49ers, your quarterback's not always safe, right? Quarterback injuries definitely happen in the NFL, and having a capable backup quarterback with some confidence and some ability to throw the football down the field is incredibly important, because like the saying goes, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So I think that Clayton Tune with a 6th round pick is more than value enough. And then moving down to the last pick from the Carolina Panthers, pick 222. Again, not a whole lot of value here, not a whole lot of playmakers, but there was a special teams player that was available. Jake Moody, the kicker from Michigan, is the best kicker in college football. He is somebody that has won Michigan games over and over and over again this season. And with the Lions having some kicking woes over the last couple of years, really since Matt Prater left, I think bringing in a guy like Jake Moody with a 7th round pick, with a pick that is probably going to be a throwaway or going to be a shot in the dark anyway, getting kind of a prospect you know is very good, getting a kicker and a special teams player that you know is going to be very efficient is going to be beneficial, right? And he's gonna push Michael Badgley for that position, and whether he takes it or not, I think adding that competition, adding 2 kickers you know are very good, would be a good thing for the Detroit Lions. With all that being said, that is the draft class. That is the class I think the Detroit Lions should put together this year. A class that consists of 2 cornerbacks, a top offensive guard, a top defensive lineman, safeties, linebackers, and then late in the draft, get some offensive playmakers, get a running back of the future, get a backup quarterback, get a special teams player that could be here for 2 decades, and really fill out your roster entirely through this draft. So with that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Let me know what you guys think about this class down in the comments below. What do you like? What would you change? What would you be skeptical about? And what players do you not like from this draft class? I'd be very curious to you guys think. With all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions.